Hello, students. I hope you all are doing great. Welcome back to the live streaming of the daily news analysis for 17th August 2022. And with your educator, Prithviraj Singh. So, we here at ClatPrep break the stories live daily in the evening around 5:30. And for all the students preparing for the law, the UPSC, and all the government exams, these series are really helpful. So, let us begin with the session. Well, on the very front page of the Hindu, there was an article about FIFA, right, the international body, to which actually oversees the football tournaments, the global football tournaments, has suspended India, and it has suspended the All India Football Federation, also in short called as AIFF. Now, as you have FIFA, which is a world governing body for football administration, and it supervises the global tournaments for football. Now, every country also have their own football federations. So India also has this body called as All India Football Federation. Now, recently, that is, on Tuesday, FIFA, the global body, has suspended All India Football Federation, saying that there is too much influence or undue influence from third parties in the administration of the affairs of AIFF. So there is an excessive interference in the day-to-day affairs of the All India Football Federation, and that actually violates the FIFA statutes, and so therefore they have suspended AIFF. Now, this is for the first time in the history of All India Football Federation. They have been suspended by FIFA, and it comes at a time when India was to host the Under 17 Women's World Cup in the next month. That is in the next to next month. That is in the month of October, right? So India was to host the Under 17 Women's World Cup in the month of October this year, and this suspension has come as a blow to to international to football in India, and India may be losing its chance to host Under 17 Women's World Cup. So clearly, FIFA has cited that there is an undue influence from third parties, in the day-to-day affairs of the All India Football Federation. We'll understand that how there was an influence in the coming slides. Well, recently, the top court in India, that is Supreme Court, appointed a committee of administrators to govern the AIFF. Now, this committee had 72 members, 36 were from the association or from the government, and 36 were the former players, football players. Now, it was being seen that by FIFA that there is undue influence by the executive in the day-to-day administration of the AIFF, and the AIFF should be given autonomy and independence in its functioning. Right. So therefore, they have suspended it, and in fact, uh, recently you may be knowing that AIFF's former president Praful Patel was also being relieved from his post because he was there, the president of AIFF, for around 10 to 15 years. Right. So clearly FIFA has banned the AIFF for third party influence, and this by this India has lost its right to host Women's Under 17 World Cup scheduled from October 11. Right. Now, let us understand that what is third party influence. Well, FIFA sees that the court appointed court of administrators, right? So we just mentioned, sorry, the committee of administrators, right? So the apex court appointed the committee of administrators, and this committee would have a say in the running of Indian football. And this is an excessive third-party interference in the functioning of the body, which ought to be free and autonomous. Right now, even the FIFA has in fact said that the body, the idea of having equal number of eminent football players and and the members from the government is not a prudent one, and in fact, it has to be reformed. Now, what does this ban mean for India? Well, India we may not be able to host the women's under 17 women's World Cup to be held in October, and even in fact, even the national teams will not be allowed to participate in any international tournaments. And during the course of suspension, any domestic tournament being conducted will not be recognized by either the AFC, that is Asian Football uh, Federation, or the FIFA. Right. Now, recently, Supreme Court, relieved Praful Patel and his executive committee from their responsibilities and appointed, because earlier AIFF was being regulated by an executive committee, led by Praful Patel, a former Congress member. And in fact, instead of that, the court appointed a committee of administrators or COA to oversee the AIFF's functioning, and it happened in the month of May 2022. Now, now Praful Patel completed his 3 terms and 12 years as AIFF president, in December 2020, but the polls for the post could not take place because of pending cases in Supreme Court regarding its constitution. Now, the government of India has approached the court regarding the same. Now, as I said, that this is the first time AIFF has been banned by FIFA in its 85-year history, with the apex body saying there have been flagrant violations of the FIFA statutes. Right now, the suspension, which has been already being imposed over All India Football Federation, would be lifted only, once the order to set up a committee of administrators has been repealed, and the AIF administration regains full control of the AIFF's daily affairs. Now, this suspension, FIFA has clearly said, can be lifted only when the committee of administrators would be repealed, right? So that would be banished or abolished. And FIFA Under 17 Women's World Cup, now there are dark clouds hovering over it. The center has sought an urgent hearing in the Supreme Court on the AIFF matter, and a ban on India has been on the cards since the Supreme Court removed Praful Patel as AIF president on May 18 this year. Right. So a ban on India was imminent since the Supreme Court removed Praful Patel as AIFF president in the month of May this year. Right. So now the administration has been given to the committee of administrators, and that is being, and this is what is being cited by FIFA as undue interference by the third party in the day-to-day affairs of AIFF, which actually violates its statutes. I hope it is clear. An important article. Now, even because of this move, the senior national team cannot participate in the SAFF Women's Championship next month. And right, so this is a blow on the prospects of football as a sport in India. Well, moving to the next news article on the screen. Well, the Gujarat government has recently released 11 convicts in Bilki Bano case of 2002 Gujarat riots. Students, you all would be aware about the 2002 Godhra riots and Godhra incident, and post that there were riots across the state in Gujarat, and in fact, many people died from Hindu and Muslim community. And one such horrifying incident happened, in 2002, where some members, they gang raped 3 women, Muslim women, and in fact they killed a 7-year-old child and also 3 other people, uh, and they were being accused of the murder and the heinous rape, and then they were being convicted of the same by in the year 2008. Now, since 2008, they were striving in the jail. They were, you know, they were in the jail for almost 14 years. Now they appealed one of the convicts, Shah, appealed, in fact, in the apex court that they must be released from the prison, and the state government must, use its remission powers. Now, the remission powers are there in the hands of, the president under Article 72, and similarly that with the governor under Article 161, right? So the governor and the president can use the clemency powers or the pardoning powers, like the commutation, remission, respite, reprieve, and in fact, the pardon of the death sentences, which definitely can be done by the president. Well, as far as the remission is concerned, it is you reduce the time period, of the imprisonment. Let's say the life imprisonment may be remitted to 20 years of imprisonment, right? So that means you're not changing the character or the nature of the punishment. That means the nature or the character of the punishment. Let's say if it is a stringent, punishment of then its nature won't be changed. I mean, it won't be turned into a simple life imprisonment. But what is changed is the time. Correct. I'm talking about remission. So the remission, the time is being changed from, let's say 20 years of rigorous imprisonment to 10 years of rigorous imprisonment, or let's say life imprisonment, or to 20 years of imprisonment. And in some cases, it may also be remitted to 0 years, right? That means the person is set free or the convict is set free. Now, the difference between pardon and remission, because in pardon also the person is set free, and if in remission a person is being set free by remitting or reducing the time period from, let's say, life imprisonment to 0 years. But the difference is that in remission, the disqualifications, the guilt, would still follow. The person's movement may be traced and tracked. He may not be able to enjoy all the fundamental rights that are available to a person who is set free under the pardon powers, right? So that is one thing. And clearly, Supreme Court, in fact, earlier and also the state government of Gujarat in its revised policy in 2014 have clearly, have said that those convicts who are being convicted of heinous offenses like rape, gang rape, murder, are ineligible for remission. But the petitioners actually, asked for a old law or old policy. The old policy was that of the year 1992, which actually said that those who have, committed any offense on or after 1978 and have served out 14 clear years in imprisonment must be remitted. You know, those who are sentenced for more than 15 years, 4 months, yeah, they must be remitted. So, in fact, the Gujarat government has not taken the cognizance of the 2014 policy. In fact, they have, which is a new policy which actually, makes the convicts of heinous offenses ineligible for remission. In fact, they have taken the view of the old policy of 1992, which actually allows for remission. Right. Now, as I said, that 2014 policy bars out of turn release or remission of prisoners convicted of heinous offenses like rape and murder. Now, this premature release under the Gujarat government's 1992 policy is being seen as unjustified, irrational, and blatantly biased. Right? Now it is clear, and it could be read by because it could be read easily that the Gujarat is will be undergoing elections, in the coming months, and it is clearly seen as a political influence and intervention in the judicial process, and this is something which would go a long way in actually disturbing the democratic fabric of the country. Well, the petitioner, actually Shah, he, in fact, with other 10 others, were awarded life imprisonment in the Bilki Banu rape and murder case, and the charges of gang rape and murder of seven members of Bilki Banu's family were being slapped on them. But then they used the older policy, the 1992 policy, to convince the government, the state government of Gujarat, for their early release. You know, so this is something which should not have happened, and this has actually resulted in the people losing confidence in the fair and free and transparent judicial process. In fact, the Supreme Court said that the crime was indisputably committed in Gujarat, and which is the appropriate government competent to examine the application. Even, in fact, the state of Haryana versus Jagdish case, it was being said by the settled by the apex court that the application for grant of premature release will have to be considered on the basis of the policy which is stood on the date of conviction. Right. Now, according to so in fact, if the offense was being offense happened, in the year 19 in the year 2002, the policy that was there existent was that of 1992, right? So therefore, the court had earlier stated that the application for the grant of premature release will have to be considered on the basis of the policy which stood on the date of conviction. And on the date of conviction, that is the year 2008, the policy was that of 1992. But now the reform policy of 2014 has come up. So at least the government should have used rationality in actually going ahead with this decision. Now, it is prerogative of the state to grant remission, but it should have applied its mind and followed the latest policy of 2014, right? The Supreme Court had directed to decide within 3 months. In fact, the Chief Secretary of of Gujarat, Additional Chief Secretary Mr. Rajkumar, has said that the Supreme Court directed the state government of Gujarat to decide within 3 months, and in fact, they have followed the laid down a procedure while deciding on their remission. Well, the 2014 latest policy says that the heinous offences like rape, murder, convicts cannot be released out of term by the prison administration. While it has invoked, you know, many criticism against the government. In fact, Asauddin Owaisi, the parliamentarian, uh, has condemned the present government uh, in the Gujarat and even with the center. And in fact, he said that the country is watching how the BJP pays only lip service to women's empowerment and respect for women, because women empowerment, and a fight against misogyny has been uh, uh, you know uh, focused in the Prime Minister Modi's speech on 15th of August this year. And but when it comes to Muslim women, they forget them, as it is being said by Osad and Uwaisi. Now, Uwaisi is clearly saying that is the release of these convicts as an example of women's empowerment, and in fact, he charged the BJP with being biased. So, so even in the editorial page, the same news appeared, which says that it is a remission without reform, and the premature release of prisoners must be done with discretion and wisdom. Right. So that means the state government should have used discretion and wisdom, and should not have followed blindly followed the older policy. So as I said, that the 11 convicts are being released now, and they were being charged of the heinous murder and the gang rape of three women. And in fact, it is a questionable decision of the by the state government, and their you know so they didn't had a they didn't had a consultation with the union government. And in fact, it defies the logic that those convicted for direct involvement in the rape of three women, murder of 3-year-old child, and six others can be considered candidates for premature release under any remission policy. But the court had asked the state to decide the application under its 1992 remission policy, as it was the relevant one on the date of conviction in 2008. But but having said that, it is difficult to treat this as a waiver of the requirement under Section 435 of the CRPC, which makes the consultation with center mandatory, right? So, in fact, the state government should have consulted the center before going ahead with this decision. And in fact, Section 435 of CRPC makes such consultation with the center mandatory. And further, the Constitution bench in the year 2015 in fact held that the consultation meant concurrence in this provision, right? So this consultation is concurrence. That means the decision of the center is binding on the state government, right? So in this way, in this sense, the rape combined with murder, such heinous offenses, such perpetrators of such heinous crimes should not be considered for remission. And in fact, the CRPC does not permit premature release in the form of remission or commutation, but it should be based on a legal and constitutional scheme and not on a ruler's whimsy, right? It should not be based on rulers or the government's whims and fancies. It should be based on reason, logic, and rationality. Now, so therefore, the state government of Gujarat should have used its discretion and wisdom. Further, any decision on remission should be linked to the convict's expression of regret and some promise of reform. Right. Now, we all know, and it is can be understood that so this is that the assembly election are due in by the end of the year, and it is difficult not to read political significance into this decision. I hope it is clear. Now, coming to the next news article. Well, we also discussed it yesterday that the Chinese tracking vessel Yuan Wang 5 has reached the Sri Lankan port of Hambantota. And in fact, it was being heavily objected by India as well as America, seeing it as an intrusion into the territorial waters, and in fact, to keep a watch over over Indian Ocean. And so countries like India has raised their concerns, but China is saying that it is a scientific research operation, and in fact, they are marine scientific research activities which are consistent with international law and will not impact any other country's security interests. Right. Now, the government in India and America has said that the vessel has military capabilities, right? And when it is present in the Indian Ocean region or IOR, it poses a threat on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of India, right? And we all know that America also has interests and stakes in Indo-Pacific as well as the southern Indian Ocean, right? All the Colombo has welcomed Yuan and 5, and in fact, you can see the workers in Sri Lanka waving Chinese and the Sri Lankan national flag at the arrival of the Chinese vessel Yuan Wang 5 at Hambantota port. In fact, Colombo has recently said that it firmly backs the One China policy. And you know what is One China policy? That any country who supports or enters into the diplomatic ties with Taiwan, China would cut all the ties with that country. So that is called as One China policy. And in fact, Colombo, Sri Lanka has firmly backed and recognized One China policy. However, it is very important because Sri Lanka is in dire need of help from China because it is undergoing economic crisis, and it wants to assistance coming from China to restructure its external debt and to be eligible for crucial IMF support. Now, the Chinese loans account for about 10% of Sri Lanka's total foreign debt, right? Well, the China extended about $2.8 billion to Sri Lanka soon after the pandemic hit, but has not yet stepped in much this year, right? When the Sri Lankan economy is facing distress and it has nosedived. In fact, India has extended the credit line of about $3.8 billion this year to help Sri Lanka cope with its economic crisis. Right. So India has come ahead to revive the Sri Lankan economy. In fact, the same is yet to be seen by China, but but China has, recently said that they would be helping the island nation sooner than later. Now, this vessel has arrived in Sri Lanka a day after India gifted the Dornier marine surveillance aircraft to Sri Lanka, to enhance its security capabilities. So, in this sense, Sri Lanka has become a region where both India as well as China has their stakes. Right, an important article from going to the next article. Well, we all know that the translocation of Cheetah to India is being considered, and it was being earlier said that on 15th of August, African cheetahs, numbering around 30, would be translocated to India because in India, cheetahs got extinct since 1952, and the government of India signed agreements with both South Africa and Namibia, which still have, cheetahs, and they, you know, um, they they planned about their translocation in India. And but then there are some administrative delays and there are concerns which range from the presence of leopards in Indian forests where the cheetahs would be translocated, right? So the cheetahs would be translocated to Puno Palpur National Park in Madhya Pradesh, and it's being believed that there are presence of leopards in the national park, and they may come into conflict with cheetahs, the fastest animal on the planet, right? And it may be believed to be the barrier to their arrival, right? So they are still studying those aspects, and in fact, the doctors team, the scientists are studying the animal's lineage and genetic history. So those things are examined to ensure that they are not from an excessively inbred stock, right? So their genetic history is being properly studied, and so they want the suitable founding population, right? So around 35 cheetahs would be needed over time to establish a sustainable population, right? So we know that Indian High Commission entered into agreement with Namibia and South Africa, and they signed the agreement with President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, right? This plan is still stuck in transit, so let us see how it turns out. I hope it is clear. Move to the next news article on the screen. Well, the Kerala cabinet has recently cleared the bill to curtail the chancellor's powers. Now, students, you must understand that governor, in the virtue of his position, acts as the chancellor of all the state universities, and this is an extra constitutional power. That means it is not mentioned in the constitution; it is an extra constitutional power. By virtue of his position, he acts as a chancellor of all the state universities. Number one. Number two, being chancellor, he appoints the vice chancellors of all the state universities, which are the top authorities of the state universities. Right now, uh, all the state universities of the country. Right now, the Kerala government has approved. In fact, it is now being approved by the cabinet and is to be passed by the state assembly. And this bill would curtail the governor's influence in selection of vice chancellors to state universities. In fact, they would be forming a search cum selection committee, and this committee would have a nominee of the state government as well as the vice chairman of the Kerala State Higher Education Council, right? So there would be executive, that means the nominee of the state government, as well as the vice chairman of the Kerala State Higher Education Council as the part of the selection committee, right, along with the governor, right? And it would work on a majority, and whoever candidate who receives the majority vote among the committee members can be reportedly recommended to the chancellor as the official selection, right? So in this sense, there would be a collegium which would include the nominee of the state government, the vice chairman of the Kerala State Higher Education Council, and they would propose the name of the candidate to the governor, and the governor has to appoint the same person, right? Now, the Kerala governor Arif Muhammad Khan has clearly said that such process, are unconstitutional, and and in fact, any it is absolutely, he's concerned about the state of affairs in the higher education sector. And in fact, he says that such passage of the laws without the assent or ratification of the governor is unjustified, unreasonable, and unconstitutional. Right. Well, we must understand that recently the selection process of the next VC of the Kerala University is due, and Arif Khan, in the capacity as a chancellor, is initiating the selection process for the next VC of Kerala University without consulting the government. Right. So this is there, and now many uh, state governments in India, like Maharashtra, West Bengal, and others, have curtailed the governor's powers being chancellor because of the excessive interference of the center into the state education system. Right? Because you must understand that chancellor is the wears two hats: one as the agent of the central government, second as the chief executive of the state. I hope it is clear. Moving to the next news article on the screen. Now, this article talks about the ethanol blending. As we must understand that Prime Minister Modi also, during his Conference of Parties 26 held at Glasgow, Scotland, the government of India clearly projected, placed the target of achieving 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by the year 2030. I repeat, the government has set a target for themselves to achieve 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by the year 2030, and the net zero emission target to be achieved by the year 2070. Right. Now, in order to achieve that task, the government has, in fact, cutting over its greenhouse gas emissions. And the best way to cut that is by using ethanol blending, right? Now, ethanol is a byproduct, when you extract sugar from sugarcane, the byproduct that you get is molasses, and that is being that is being blended with petrol, something called as ethanol blending, and this actually reduces the carbon footprints. Getting now, as per the policy, the current policy, the government allowed 10% ethanol blending, right? 10% ethanol blending, also called as E10. But now the government, and the government also, set the target of 20% ethanol blending to be achieved in the petrol to be achieved by the year 2030. Now, but recently, the report of the Niti Aayog, put forth ethanol roadmap, and this deadline of 2030 now has been advanced to 2025, right? So that means the deadline earlier of 20% ethanol blending was for 2000 to be achieved by 2030. It has been advanced by 5 years to 2025. Now this is a very big challenge, because you have to procure sugarcane, you have to harvest, and you have to grow sugarcane in the agricultural fields. Is it sustainable, or do we have any or some other options to actually explore the green energy sources, right? Now, so this is your 10% rule. Now, in fact, in the I-Day speech, on the 76th I-Day speech, he rooted for energy independence, right, and said Atmanirbharta in our energy sector. In fact, India is one of the world's biggest oil importing nations, right? And that's a blending of ethanol with petrol burns less fossil fuel, while running the vehicles. But the problem is that when you increase the ethanol blending, it requires a different engine, mechanics, because ethanol always result into rust. It may, result into rusting of the engine. So therefore, the mechanics of the engine has to be changed. The new engines, compatible with the 20% ethanol blending, have to be manufactured by the automobile manufacturers, and we don't have any policy as of now, right? So the government has to think in that direction, correct? Because it may also increase the cost of the vehicle, right? Now, India, as I said, aims to increase the ethanol blending ratio to 20%, that we discussed. And in fact, the ethanol blending will help bring down our share of oil imports almost 85%, right? And would help increase farmers' income because of the ethanol output. Uh, in fact, they would also now be enticed to use the ethanol, use the molasses in production of in producing ethanol instead of stubble burning, which poses serious concerns over the environment, right? So today, India's net import of petroleum was 185 million tons at a cost of $55 billion in 2020-21, and that a successful ethanol blending program can save the country around $4 billion per annum, right? So it is very, very useful. And while the Niti Aayog has advanced the E20 goal to 2025, consistent supply of raw material for ethanol production may prove to be a challenge, right? And so this is where we want to reach. This is the annual coarse grains production, and from 40 million metric tons, we have to reach around 160 million metric tons by the year 2025-26, and that is a daunting task, right? So it senses a steep increase needed in coarse grains output in the coming years. Now, now, the government has allowed the procurement of ethanol produced from other sources because besides molasses, there are some other sources also for ethanol. All the molasses is definitely called as the first generation ethanol or 1G, right? First generation ethanol or 1G. And the other sources of ethanol are extracted from many materials like rice straw, and you have wheat straw, corn cobs, corn stubble, bagasse, bamboo and woody biomass, which are called as second generation ethanol sources or 2G sources, right? Now, while inaugurating the Indian Oil Corporation, recently Prime Minister Modi also inaugurated the Indian Oil Corporation's 2G ethanol plant, right? Just the last week. And 2G ethanol plant means it would be using raw materials such as rice straw, corn cobs, corn starter, bamboo, etc., for the production of ethanol, right? And now, in fact, the Prime Minister also has hinted at the advantages of farmers selling the residual stubble, left behind after rice is harvested to help make biofuels. And in fact, it would mean lesser stubble burning, as we just discussed. Now, though America, China, Canada, and Brazil all have ethanol blending programs as a developing country, even Brazil stands out. It had demonstrated that the ethanol content in the petrol should be anywhere in the range of 18 to 27.5%, and it finally touched the 27% target in the year 2021, right? So Brazil, as a developing country, stands out, and is a outstanding example in the use of ethanol or the ethanol blending. Now, at the time of Niti Aayog report in June last year, the industry had committed to the government to make all vehicles E2 material compliant by 2023, right? So you have to build the vehicles which are E2, or 20% ethanol blending compliant, because you have to change the way the mechanics of the petrol points, the plastics, rubber, steel, and other components in vehicles, and so that they can store a fuel that is 20% ethanol blended, right? Now, if you don't do that, then rusting would be an obvious impediment, right? Now, industry is committed to produce E2 engine compliant by 2025, which means that the engines would need to be tweaked so as to process petrol which has been blended with 20% ethanol, right? However, the sources in the auto industry stated that they prefer the use of biofuels as the next step compared to other options such as EV or electronic vehicle or hydrogen power and compressed natural gas, right? Now, this is mainly because it is much more cost saving, right, as compared to the other options. And in fact, they are ready with the optimization of engine for higher ethanol blending. Uh, But the problem is the storage, that where you store, the ethanol, and storage would have to be separate, which will then raise the costs. Well, we must understand that ethanol burns completely emitting nil carbon dioxide, right? So it is completely being burnt and it doesn't release any carbon dioxide when it is being burnt. But it does not reduce the emission of another key pollutant, which is nitrous oxide, right? Which is also part of the greenhouse gases, right? So, so in this sense, it is again something which has to be noted upon. And there would definitely be an inefficient land use in the ethanol production. And in fact, when you compare it with the EV batteries or the solar power plants, we can use land more efficiently by generating renewable power for EV batteries. So the water needed to grow crops for ethanol is another debating point, right? Because huge amount of water, large amounts of water are being required. For example, sugarcane, which is the cheapest source of ethanol, on average, a ton of sugarcane can produce 100 kg of sugar, right? And 70 liters of ethanol. Now, meaning a liter of ethanol from sugar requires around 2,860 liters of water. Can you imagine? That means if you're producing a liter ethanol from sugar, it would require 2,860 liters of water, right? So that would always be, a debating point. And this, would increase in the coming years because the government has advanced the target to 2025, right? Now, the report also says that the sugarcane would likely continue to be the primary source for ethanol, even with the 12 planned farm waste or 2G ethanol distilleries, right? And we would be requiring around 3.65 crore liters of water a year, right, to meet this target. So this is something a cause of concern and a sign of worry. Right. So, in fact, the report has flagged the impact on crop output meant for food and fodder, and there are already indications that more sugarcane is being grown, and that the government of India encouraged more corn production at the India Maize Summit held in the month of May 2022. Right. Now, there are climate change induced heat waves across the European subcontinent, and including and even in America, and they are worrying factors and can lead to lower than expected harvests with little notice, right? So government of India has also, the maize export targets, and because the global corn or the maize production is dwindling, and this adds an incentive for India to try and export more, right? So under these uncertainties, where the global maize production is has nosedived, India is thinking to increase its production and in fact export more corn or maize outside. In these uncertain conditions about the future production, India may not find it easy to simultaneously strengthen the domestic food supply systems, set aside adequate stocks for lean years, right, and divert grain to ethanol at the expected rate in the coming years, right. So I hope you are clear with this article and you understood, the intricacies of this article, a very important one. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the session. Press the like button for press the bell icon for regular updates. Do like, comment, and share. That's all from my side. Signing off. Wish you all the best. See you in the next class. Good day. Goodbye.